the French Grand Prix, the FIA will make its rear wing deflection tests even more strict after Mercedes remarked that Red Bull's rear wings were bending in a suspicious way at high speeds. So what's the deal with these so-called flexy wings? Why are they coveted? How are they policed? And is Christian Horner right to be annoyed about the FIA, quote, changing the rules mid-season? Before I answer that, let's all break bread and say thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. If you want some additional privacy protection while gallivanting across the internet, visiting websites about goodness knows what, then NordVPN could be just what you need. And if you want to virtually position yourself in different countries around the globe in order to access subscription services like international Netflix without even leaving your home, then NordVPN can do that for you too. And if you want to be able to use your account through 6 different devices simultaneously so you can protect all of your computers, phones and tablets at the same time, NordVPN gives you that ability. And if you want to be able to choose your VPN from 4,500 servers around the world, well, NordVPN gives you over 5,500 servers. Do you want a caramel macchiato? Well, NordVPN doesn't do that. Yet. NordVPN are offering Chainbear viewers a 2-year plan plus 1 additional month with a huge discount when you visit nordvpn.com/chainbear and use code chainbear at checkout. So go to nordvpn.com/chainbear. And now back to the video about sneaky flexy wings. So after Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes pointed out that Red Bull's rear wings seemed to be deforming excessively on the straights, Christian Horner of Red Bull said Toto Wolff seemed to be more interested in Red Bull's wings than his own car's development. Which is pretty funny, as Red Bull are forever scrutinising the legality of Mercedes cars and practices, and let's be honest, teams policing each other is a healthy and vital part of Formula One. As teams watch each other's developments for insight into their innovations to spark potential avenues for development ideas on their own cars, they also quickly spot designs that skirt the edges of the rules. Are they legal? Are they not? Well, what rival teams will do is officially question the legality of the innovations or practices they spot to the FIA, so that either the innovation is shown to be illegal and removed from the rival team, or the questioning team can feel confident in implementing their own version of the idea. And so in questioning the flexing and movement of Red Bull's rear wing, the FIA have responded in beefing up the rear wing tests, which we'll get to. But why would you want your wings to flex in the first place? So wings are a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, a beefy wing will give you lots of lovely downforce so you can go fast around the corners with all the increased grip that gives you by pushing the tyres into the ground. On the flip side, those big wings have a lot of drag, so will reduce the car's top speed and its ability to accelerate quickly to those speeds. F1 wings push the car down but also pull it backwards. With DRS, a driver can reduce that drag on the straight by flipping a wing element up so its incidence with the high-speed air is diminished. But otherwise, wings are fixed, so in design and setup, the wing must be optimised to deliver the right balance of downforce and drag to the current circuit. But if you could allow the wing to flex, the drag or downforce of the wing could rotate it such that the planes are flattened against the airflow, reducing the drag. There are other advantages to flexible bodywork, including like deforming the front wing to change the airflow down the entire chassis at high speeds, but let's stick with what's relevant to right now. What do the rules say? Well, let's open the old technical regulations to paragraph 3.8. Now obviously we all know it off by heart, but let me just summarise it for you anyway. So basically the rules are blah 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 blah, and then any specific part of the car influencing its aerodynamic performance must remain immobile in relation to the sprung part of the car, not including the deployment of the DRS obviously. Now this is a tricky little regulation because immobile is impossible. You can't just make the bodywork that stiff. That's just the nature of materials. If the wing mounting was perfectly stiff, it would also be perfectly brittle and break into pieces under load. So there's always going to be a little bit of give in materials. A little bit of elasticity, which basically means if you deform an object under force, it will return to its original shape when you release that force. But something doesn't have to be as bendy and pliable as a 30cm ruler. It can be incredibly resistant to deformation while having a tiny amount of give. And that's basically what the FIA are asking for. But bearing in mind that some deformation is inevitable, how do you regulate bodywork to remain immobile? With flexibility tests. The whole of the very next article, 3.9, describes a series of load tests given around particular points of the car and the tolerances in movement each part is permitted. But relevant here are 3.93 and 3.94, which state the bodywork may not move more than 1 degree horizontally when subject to a rearward force of 1,000 newtons from particular points, and the bodywork may not deflect more than 3mm vertically when a 500 Newton load is applied at defined points. The rules even define the exact shape of the pads that will exert the load onto the bodywork, so teams are prepared to meet the test. For reference, 1000 newtons as a force is very roughly the same as 100 kilograms of weight, which is about 1.4 Max Verstappen's. So if it helps, imagine the downward test being 0.7 Max Verstappen sitting on the rear wing and it only being allowed to budge 3mm. And for the rearward test, imagine the car hanging from its nose and 1.4 Max Verstappen sitting on the wing and it only being allowed to bend back 1 degree. That's pretty tough. So at this point, it's important to note that Red Bull is legal with respect to the tests as specified in the regulations. It has been put under the required loads and not flexed beyond the allowed tolerances. That is how the legality of flexibility is defined. However, the vagaries of Article 3.8, which state aerodynamic devices must be immobile, combined with the final clause of Article 3.9, which states that the FIA reserves the right to introduce further load or deflection tests on any part of the bodywork which appears to be moving while the car is in motion, give the FIA scope to enforce the spirit of the rules, must be immobile, by adding further requirements to the testing procedure. So the FIA aren't changing the rules, as Christian Horner suggested. The rule is that the relevant bodywork mustn't move, and the FIA can increase the strength of the tests to make sure the teams aren't circumnavigating this rule by exploiting the difference between the test environment and real-world running. But where Horner and other annoyed teams might have a good point is the costs involved in a mid-season change like this. Team budgets are now capped, so adjusting their designs to meet the new tests bites a big chunk out of the limited spending they are allowed on development, which can be a real problem for them. But the flip side to this is quite simple, really. That is the risk you'll take if you exploit the testing limitations to spiritually sidestep the rule. They know the test can be ramped up at any moment, it's written right there in the regulations, and they know that an onboard camera can easily spot if your wing is misbehaving. So it's hard to be too sympathetic when everything is pretty clearly on the table. Though I will say, if you're a smaller team with a smaller budget and your wing doesn't flex on track and yet you know it won't pass the stricter tests, well, that's got to sting a little, and all due to another team's shenanigans. Now, should Toto be aggressively pursuing potential protests against the results of the Azerbaijan and Monaco Grand Prix as he seems to be suggesting? Yeah, that seems a little catty to me, particularly as the FIA has already given a fairly small window for teams to change up their designs. But that's F1, isn't it? Like I said, teams policing each other hard is all part of the sport's internal checks and balances. But I must say, it does leave a bit of a dirty taste in the mouth, doesn't it?